state's wanting to call Dr. Carney.
Yes, Your Honor.
And what, do this so I can factor in while that's going on, the best thing for the jury and the parties, what is the state's thoughts on closing arguments time-wise?
I technically don't know the exact time. It would be at least 30 minutes, maybe 40 minutes for my first close. If it goes longer, I pre-apologize.
Talk about total.
No, I was talking about for my first close.
So, total, what do you think it would be?
An hour.
And
I'll say about 45 minutes.
for your total argument? The reason, well, let's see how long this goes.
Your Honor, I have one request based off of their opening presentation. They had some photographs and different things in I think it was jurisdiction and maybe opening. Our request is just that anything that is shown to the jury during closing arguments is something that has actually been admitted as an exhibit.
Okay. I mean, that, I would think is a given. Okay.
And Judge, I have a request, and that is at the close of the proof, whenever we get to that.
That's the big qualifier.
Exactly. If we could have a break, perhaps discuss the jury instructions.
Oh, sure, we'll have to do that.
But
All right, let the jury know.
Good afternoon, Dr. Carney.
Good afternoon.
You were not able to hear the prior testimony of Dr. Lindsay and Dr. Larkin, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. There was some testimony that was specific to fentanyl and whether Ms. Benning might have died from a cocaine and fentanyl overdose, which your autopsy result is that the cause of death was acute cocaine toxicity. Can you describe what, if any evidence did you have of fentanyl in Ms. Benning's system prior to her admission at the ED?
I don't have any evidence that she had fentanyl in her system prior to arriving at the emergency department.
And was there specific testing of the urine sample from 2259 that was tested specifically for fentanyl?
Yes, ma'am.
And that was negative, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And then that first blood that was taken at 2231, there was no fentanyl detected, but fentanyl, the specific drug of fentanyl was not part of that test. Can you describe what was tested and kind of what results were not present that give an indication that there was also no fentanyl in her blood?
Well, when this commonly happens when we have someone who we believe has taken too much of a substance. They go to the hospital, they are unresponsive, and some testing is done on the urine to try to help direct the blood testing. In this case, we have an initial urine sample that is positive for cocaine and metabolites, no other drugs, no fentanyl. So when I have this limited amount of blood to work with, less than 2 milliliters, I really want to direct the testing so I can catch anything that's there, maybe that wasn't tested for already. In discussion with the toxicologist at Vanderbilt who had followed her for days and been trying to figure out what drugs might be in her system, we decided on testing for cocaine and metabolites since it was positive for cocaine initially and metabolites, and I wanted to catch that epidene methyl ester with it, knowing that the cocaine could break down. I tested for designer opioids. So these are the fentanyls that have the added chemical groups. So you can see it here on the list. There's furanol fentanyl and acryl fentanyl and all of these designer fentanyls, and all of those were negative, as well as one of the things that's been mentioned previously in this case, the 4-ANPP, which can be a precursor to fentanyl. It could also be a metabolite. That was also negative. And the testing reporting limit was very low to try to catch anything that was there. It was negative. And then I think that was the bulk of my testing on that. And then we did the additional testing on the fetal liver tissue.
And the testing on the fetal liver tissue, you've testified about that before, but was there any fentanyl associated with that?
No.
And that's even after treatment in the hospital, correct?
Correct.
And the levels of the subsequent test, which you referenced working with a toxicologist at Vanderbilt, is that Dr. Berkeley?
Yes, ma'am.
And so the subsequent testing of blood and urine, those results, were those results consistent with her receiving it as medication in the hospital?
Yes, ma'am.
And again, the cause of death is acute cocaine toxicity, correct?
That's correct.
And there is no evidence that there was fentanyl in her system upon admission at the emergency department.
That's correct.
There was testimony by one of the defense experts that it was an assumption to say that Ms. Benning ingested something orally. Can you describe, you determined that it was ingested, and that is oral ingestion. Can you explain how you were able to determine that, and if it makes sense that it was not orally ingested?
When we look at one of the toxicology textbooks or toxicology books that I refer to rather regularly, and it gets updated on a regular basis with all new studies, the studies have shown kind of the average, or the ranges and the averages for the amounts of cocaine in cocaine intoxications that have been detected and tested, both in obviously controlled studies. You know how much they've taken and how much the amounts will be, but even in ones that have been treated in the hospital, whether they've died or not. And the levels that we see in Ms. Benning's blood are pretty much in oral ingestions. So your nasal insufflation or snorting, your IV injections, you don't have this level in those sorts of cases. You really see it in the thousands like this when they've ingested it orally.
Which, that's part of that oral ingestion is because that level is so high. Is that correct?
That's correct.
But also we have that vomit from the comforter that also tested positive for cocaine.
That's true.
And when EMTs see the pink vomit on her mouth, but they also find her face down with her face on the comforter and the vomit stain is under her mouth, that is part of the evidence that you considered in determining this oral ingestion.
Yes, ma'am.
And then we also have a witness who testified that Ms. Benning said to Blaise Taylor, what did you put in my drink? I knew my drink tasted funny. And you considered that, is that right?
I did.
Dr. Lindsay also made a comment that you determined that the cocaine all spontaneously hydrolyzed in the tube. That was the clear cap tube without the preservative. Does that make sense to you? And can you explain kind of what happened with the clear cap tube and then it hydrolyzed? Is that something that is commonly seen?
Yes, so that's something we kind of talked about before, how typically when we draw blood at the time of autopsy, we want to put it in a gray top tube that has that sodium fluoride to stop those enzymes from breaking down the cocaine, because it can continue to break down even after the person is deceased while it's still sitting there in their body and while it's sitting in the tube if you don't have something to stop those enzymes. We had a clear top tube which didn't have that, so the blood continues to break down. I've seen this on many occasions with hospital blood samples with maybe a prolonged time after, death before autopsy. And so that's why we want to look for that ecgonine methyl ester. I found a study that was published back in the 90s, so this has been kind of a known thing for quite some time when you're looking at post-mortem levels of cocaine, that if you want an accurate estimate of the cocaine or accurate number of nanograms per milliliter of cocaine that's in the blood at the time of death, then you want to add the cocaine and the ecgonine methyl ester together, because that was all parent cocaine initially.
And this is not something that just but is that something that the other forensic pathologist at the medical examiner's office, that is just a normal practice of how you would estimate the parent cocaine?
Yes.
And Dr. Bergaleri at Vanderbilt, y'all discussed that, and she in fact agreed with you. Is that correct?
I don't remember if we talked about the specific numbers after the fact, but we did talk a lot about the testing and what tests would be most appropriate to order and what we were worried about for her cause of death.
And Dr. Bergaleri also was aware of the cocaine on the comforter, and y'all spoke at length about if it was oral ingestion and the numbers and if everything lined up. And Dr. Bergaleri was in agreement.
I think we did talk about that because we had a meeting with several of us, and we discussed aspects of the case.
Which there were several meetings where everybody was meeting to kind of discuss what the levels were and make sure that everybody was in agreement of kind of what happened and what the tests showed. During those meetings, it came up where it was the lawyers were asking, could you determine how much cocaine was ingested? And the result of that was all of the toxicologists saying no.
That's correct. So the problem is, I can't remember, I may have mentioned this before, when you buy medication at the store, it's tested. There's, quality standards. You know that when you buy that over-the-counter medication like ibuprofen or Tylenol, you know how much is in each pill because it's been standardized, it's been tested, it's passed, those sorts of testing. With your illicit drugs that you buy on the street, you don't have that kind of testing. You don't know how pure the drug is that you're buying, how much is in this particular packet of powder or liquid compared to another one. You don't even know for sure what's in it. They may tell you it's one thing and it's something else. So there's really no way to say exactly how much amount or how many times something was given.
And part of the high number is that oral ingestion and the other evidence that it was put into a drink and it was liquefied and in a liquid. Is that right?
So liquids or something dissolved in a liquid is going to absorb more quickly than something that's encapsulated, where the acid in your stomach has to eat through a capsule or has to break down a solid mass of the drug. If it's liquid, it's really just going to spread out and it's going to absorb more quickly.
And you previously testified about the one other autopsy case that had a similar level of cocaine concentration in their blood, and it was someone that swallowed some type of cocaine rock something in custody out of jail.
And object to the leading nature of the motion.
Okay, the jury calls that. What's your question about that?
Well, Judge, I was restating her prior testimony so I could get to the question.
Okay, good.
You testified about that previously, and that has the same level as Jade's level in this case, similar.
Yes, it did.
And based on the facts of that case, it would not have been an inmate that would have ingested 16 balls.
I mean, it has to be something small enough that he has on his person, he could swallow it quickly while on intake, and then of course it affected him rather quickly as well.
And liquid cocaine can be lethal even at a smaller dose. Is that correct?
Well, again, we don't know how much is in it, so, it could be very concentrated.
And so we would not be able to guess that. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And also, specifically, cocaine, you've testified to this, has a connection to placental abruption.
Yes, ma'am.
And that is very commonly known, that it is the one substance that has a direct connection to that. Is that correct?
That's
I would
correct.
ask that the counsel stop leaving over this case.
Okay.
Well, Judge, part of this is reiterating her prior testimony.
Okay, so all right, she's answered that. What's your next question?
Can you describe how Jade Benning arrived to Vanderbilt University Medical Center?
How she arrived,
Like, what was her state when she arrived in the ED?
she had no pulse. Yeah, she was pulseless. She had no blood pressure. She was unresponsive and not breathing on her own. She relied on medical therapy and other providers to basically do her breathing for her.
And Dr. Olashoga testified that she arrived to the emergency department dead. Would you disagree with that?
No.
They also had testimony from Dr. Larkin. She works in an emergency department. She's not a forensic pathologist. And she was testifying about snoring and agonal breathing. Can you describe when does agonal breathing occur? What are the circumstances?
So agonal breathing is that gasping for air type breathing that occurs when the brain is not getting enough oxygen.
And is there one thing that causes that or one circumstance that causes that?
No. So anything that's going to deprive your brain of oxygen, so that right around the time of death. So it could be drugs, it could be a natural event. It's not specific to any one thing or any one drug.
And that is consistent with Ms. Benning's case of that acute cocaine toxicity.
Yes, so the oxygen is not getting to her brain as needed, and so she's having that agonal breathing.
And the circumstances of the EMTs finding her face down in the bed with the pink vomit under her mouth, can you describe if that happened after the agonal breathing? Is that consistent?
So at that point, it sounds like she's face down in the comforter and she's vomiting, and she's not conscious to be able to roll over and kind of protect her own airway so that she gets her face out of the comforter and out of the vomit so that she can breathe. So I would expect it would happen, around the same time or after the agonal breathing.
And would that be the same time that she would be going pulseless?
Yes, ma'am.
There was also some testimony related to someone who has consistent drug use. Was there if someone is using drugs consistently on a daily basis, do you find signs of kind of physical indications of that at autopsy?
There are things that we can look for. If you have someone who's smoking a drug, they may have more of that kind of black deposition in the lungs from where they're a smoker. We can look for if they're snorting it and it's something like cocaine that's going to constrict the blood vessels and could cause damage to the tissues. We can look for any sort of holes or damage to the nasal septum, the little dividing thing right that divides the two sides of your nose. We can also look for if they're an injection, if they inject their drugs, look for needle marks, needle tracks, where they've injected repeatedly to the point where they've scarred that vein, and they often have multiple needle puncture wounds over that as well.
So there are physical signs that can be seen at autopsy that indicate the manner of use.
Yes.
And specifically to Ms. Benning's heart, there was testimony that the focal myocyte, is it
Hypertrophy.
Thank you. That was indicative of long-term cocaine use.
I mean, I see scattered myocyte hypertrophy in many cases that aren't related to cocaine, that it's more of a natural cause of death, so I don't think that's specific to cocaine.
And did you have any evidence whatsoever that Ms. Benning was a cocaine user ever?
No.
And Dr. Carney, your expert opinion on the cause of death is acute cocaine toxicity, not a fentanyl overdose, correct?
Correct.
Questions on behalf of the
Good afternoon, Dr. Carney.
Good afternoon.
How are you today?
All right.
I just wanted to talk with you about a few things. You stated that on direct examination that you had a meeting with Dr. Brucolari and others,
Yes.
and at that meeting you guys were discussing the toxicology results for Ms. Benning.
Yes.
And who all was at that meeting?
Oh, we were discussing timeline of events and toxicology.
Do you have notes there in regards to that meeting?
I'm not sure. I know that there was the police and Dr. Berkeley and me, and I think General Norman may have been there as well.
And I'm sorry, did you have notes for that meeting?
I did, but I don't see them here.
In that meeting, were you aware that Dr. Brucolari found that Ms. Benning did in fact have cocaine in her system?
No,
She didn't share that with you?
I don't recall seeing those records. No.
Are you familiar with the CFSRE records?
I am now, but I don't remember discussing this then.
Okay. And now that you have seen the CFSRE records, have you since learned that Ms. Benning did in fact have cocaine in her system?
I believe it was in the urine, and yes.
Okay, thank you. You testified earlier in regards to toxicology report that was a result of the blood that you sent to NMS. And I think you said that you had a very limited amount of blood to test for. Is that right?
That's correct.
And the reason you had a very limited amount, it wasn't because you didn't request enough, it was because you wanted the most accurate picture of what was going on with Ms. Benning at the time she entered the hospital.
That's correct. We want the earliest blood sample if possible.
And the earliest blood sample, to be fair, was retrieved for medical purposes, not forensic purposes, correct?
That's correct.
And so that's why it didn't have the gray topper on top.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And when you ordered those tests on that blood for which you relied on for your results in your autopsy, you did not order the fentanyl test, correct?
Correct. I ordered the designer opioids, it's kind of specialty fentanyl test.
Right, but it's not fentanyl, correct?
Correct.
And so if fentanyl was present, we wouldn't have known because you didn't order that test. Is that right?
Yes, I didn't order that test because it was not in the urine. So if it's not in the urine along with the cocaine, there was no reason to waste blood testing for something that's not there.
But to be fair, nothing was in the urine. Isn't that true?
No, that's not true. There was cocaine in the urine.
Which urine are you referring to?
The very first one.
The one for 225 and 2259?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Well, your blood sample was 225 and 2231, which was before the urine.
Yes, so cocaine was in both.
Okay, but you said you were relying on the urine.
Right, to help direct my testing because I didn't have a lot of blood, so I needed to direct my testing to things that I was concerned about. So the fentanyl had been ruled out in the urine and the cocaine was ruled in, but I wasn't sure that anyone had tested for the designer fentanyl, so that's why I tested for those.
So but just so that the jury is clear, fentanyl itself would not have shown up.
Not in this particular test.
Not
no.
in the blood, okay,
Correct.
just to be clear. Now, what test was that the fentanyl showed up in? And 22, that did not show up. Is that 2259?
Yes,
Do you
ma'am.
have a toxicology report number for that?
I don't have it here. I believe that was the CSFRE. That was the earliest urine that was tested.
Which test result is that?
That was on the 2259 urine. The CSFRE where they did the testing for the over 1,000 drugs.
Okay, I mean, what's the test number so that I can look at it?
I don't have that one here. I don't have that number right here.
Okay. In regards to the vomit, the vomit was before the blood and the urine, correct?
Correct.
Were you aware that fentanyl showed up in the vomit?
No, the findings it says for case sample was positive for cocaine and benzoylecgonine.
Did you learn later, if I could have the elbow, please? Just so that we're oriented, the 231, 29, 285,
Yes.
which is for the comforter, you see that?
Yes.
Do you see here with the 231, 29, 285, that fentanyl is in fact present in the vomit? Did you know that?
The interpretation, sorry.
I'm sorry.
Okay, she's gonna explain.
Well, the interpretation here says the case sample 007, which is the fabric in the area with the visible stains, was also none detected for the presence of fentanyl.
Okay. Did you know that the reason that NMS may not indicate a positive is because it will be below the reportable limit?
Yes.
Not necessarily because there's no indication of it. Are you aware of that?
Yes. I've never been told that there was ever any fentanyl in it.
And to be fair, did you know that these records are part of what we call a litigation packet?
I did not know that.
And when you get your toxicology report results, they don't come with a litigation packet.
Correct.
Right. You have to request and pay for those.
Okay.
Are you familiar with pharmacokinetics?
Some.
Are you able to perform the pharmacokinetics calculations?
No.
Okay. That's for a forensic toxicologist, right?
Right.
Okay. And were you aware that Dr. Kotulski did not agree with your method of combining EME with cocaine to get a definitive measure of concentration level.
Objection, Your Honor, counsel is misstating the witness
Okay,
testimony.
the jury's heard that. What are you wanting to reference about prior testimony without you determining whether it's correct or not?
No, Your Honor, I checked, it is.
See, there you go again. It's not up to you to check. These ladies and gentlemen of the jury are gonna check everything.
Yes,
So
sir.
what is your question?
In regards to your testing to get an accurate picture of exactly what was going on as it relates to substances, a hair follicle test would be a good way to actually get a good picture of what type of drugs and or substances in someone's body. Would you agree?
Well, the problem with that, sometimes if you're worried about levels, is there's not a lot of studies or samples or experiences you can compare to with hair. They draw blood in the hair, sure, and show if there's any drugs there.
It wouldn't show?
Yeah, it would show if there were any drugs there, yes.
Thank you. As it relates to the, I know I'm gonna mess this up, the focal myocyte
Hypertrophy.
hypertrophy, thank you. Miss Benning was a young woman, correct?
Yes,
And otherwise a very healthy young woman, correct?
correct.
Now, we're certainly not saying that the only reason that she would have an enlarged ventricle is because of cocaine use. Not saying that, but it is certainly a possibility, is it not?
I mean, something that will increase your blood pressure would cause your, heart cells to work harder. So you could say myocyte hypertrophy goes with things like that. So that could be a lot of different things. Cocaine's one of many on the list.
What other things would be on the list?
I mean, any sort of stimulant or, even, who knows, anxiety or genetic problems or whatever.
When you say stimulant, what is a stimulant?
Well, like fentanyl, methamphetamine, something that drives the blood pressure up.
When you were determining and making the decision as to what to test for, I think you said that you had done some research into Miss Benning, and with the cocaine, that was significant enough for you to stop there, right?
Well, it's not so much that it's stopped there, but we really want to, and this is the case because, like I said, the blood sample is limited. We want to kind of focus in on the things that we want to confirm, because otherwise, if you test for everything, you're going to run out of blood. You're not going to be able to confirm anything. So, in this case, we already knew that she was positive for cocaine, and we wanted to get a number. Like I wanted a number that I could recognize, and then that was really the only positive test that she had.
When you were making your decisions, weren't you not making your decisions under the impression that she had no history of drug use?
I mean, whether she had a history of drug use or not, you need to look at what are your positive tests. And then you can think about the history when you're looking at the interpretation of those results.
But weren't you told she had no history of drug use?
I was told that the only drug history she had was making some marijuana edibles in the past, and that had stopped when she found out she was pregnant. So no recent drug history.
Do you remember taking or giving a testimony previously in regards to Ms. Benning?
Yes.
And do you remember when you gave that testimony, I believe you stated that she does not have a history of drug use. She did not appear to want to take anything that would harm her child or herself.
Right. So knowing with her pregnancy, she stopped even with the marijuana edibles, and there was no reason to believe she had taken any drugs as of late.
But she did have a history of drug use, didn't she?
We talked about that. So you even showed me the transcript, and we talked about how I said she didn't have specifically like the cocaine, that sort of illicit drug use, that the only drug use I was aware of was the marijuana edibles.
Well, I'm looking at the transcript here, it doesn't say that. It just says no history of drug use.
Okay, well, we talked about it on my direct, or my, cross the first time to clarify this.
And if you say that she did not appear to want to take anything that would want to harm herself or her child, How do you explain cocaethylene in her system?
I don't know how the cocaine was delivered to her, if it was absorbed in some sort of alcohol. I do not know how that was done or where the alcohol came from.
Would Ms. Benning not be able to taste cocaine and alcohol if she was given it unknowingly?
I don't know how much alcohol it might be, and I don't know anything about cocaine taste, so I can't help you with that.
Fair enough. And certainly when you, or before you came to any of your conclusions, you had met with law enforcement and the prosecution, correct?
So I met with law enforcement because I rely on law enforcement in their investigation when I'm determining manner of death. So it's very important that I know the circumstances of the case.
And that is where you learned she had no history of drug use, right?
The history that we've discussed, yes.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Just to clarify, Dr. Carney, your cause of death was not based off of the meetings with anyone. It was just the manner of death. Is that right?
Correct. So the cause of death is something I'll determine through the autopsy and the toxicology and the histology, the looking at the slides, all the work that I do on my end. I really refer to the investigation for manner of death.
Any other questions?
No, Your Honor.
Thank you. Any further proof from the state?
No, Your Honor.
Any further proof on behalf of Mr. Taylor?
No, Your Honor.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, the jury, if you'll step back down the hall briefly, we'll get back with you.